This time we're going to begin the funeral services of Mrs. Donna M Moss. Rabbi Amy Memes Fowler from Beth Em at the Free Synagogue will be officiating. It's at this time she's going to perform the ancient ceremony of Kriya, tearing of the cloth and the ribbon. Folks, please take a moment if you want to be seated, and please be sure your phones are off. David, stand next to us. I'm sorry. It's okay.
As you may be aware, our patriarch Jacob, upon hearing the news that his son Joseph had died, he tore his clothing in halves. And we tear today as a symbol of how our hearts are. And that is torn. And we recite this bracha, this blessing. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, Dayan.
Just make sure you have it. You want to do the cost for full cottage? No, I have it. Okay.
I have an extra. I noticed that there's a couple of chairs that are available for those who, if it might be helpful to you to sit, and as Rabbi Mark Shapiro of blessed memory said, it is a sign of wisdom, not a sign of weakness. We want everybody to be in good health and good shape. If you need that chair, please take a seat, or if you find that in the middle of the service, if you need to come sit down, please do. I want to thank everyone who is here in person with us today, and those of you who are able to join us through the blessing of technology. We feel your presence and your support and your love and your comfort as we pay our respects this day to Donna M Moss. Death has taken our beloved Donna. Our friends grieve in their darkened world. In their silence there is lamentation, in their tears there is loneliness. Lost in their sorrow, may they find the presence of loving friends. Hear them, O God. Be with them. For Donna's love that united us in life and which death cannot sever. For her companionship that we shared along life's path and which continues through the tenderness of memory. For the gifts of her heart and mind that brought us joy and happiness, and is now a precious remembrance. For all these and more, we give our thanks to God. In this time of grief, we listen to the voice of our sacred scriptures that brings us the ever-new message of God's nearness. It tells us of our kinship with the Creator, in light as in darkness, in joy as in sorrow, in life as in death. Adonai ro'i lo echsar, binoteshet yarbetzeni, Amei menuchot yanachaleni, nafshi yishovev yancheni b'maglei tzedek lema'an shemo, gam ki elech begeit salmavet, lo irara, ki ata imadi, shiftecha umishantecha, hema yanachamuni, ta'aroch lefanai shulchan neged sodarai, tishanta v'shem en roshi, kosi rivaya. Ach tov v'chesed yirdafuni kol yemei chayai. V'shavti b'veit Adonai le'orech yamim. If you would like to follow along with the English translation of the 23rd Psalm, you may do so in the inside of your folders. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Eshet Chayil, mi yimsa, v'rachok mipninim michra. A woman of valor, who can find? She is more precious than fine pearls. Her husband trusts in her, and so he lacks nothing. She does him good, never harm, all the days of her life. She perceives that her labor is rewarding. Her candle burns on into the night. She reaches out to those in need and extends her hands to the poor. She is clothed in strength and dignity, and she faces the future cheerfully. She speaks with wisdom. The law of kindness is on her lips. Her children rise up and bless her. Her husband sings her praises. Many daughters have done valiantly, but you excel them all. As we find comfort in those ancient words, words from the Psalms, words after Proverbs 31, so too might we find comfort in these words, which come from our High Holy Day liturgy, written by Rabbi Alvin Fine. Birth is a beginning, and death a destination. But life is a journey, a going, a growing, from stage to stage, from childhood to maturity, and youth to age, from innocence to awareness, and ignorance to knowing, from foolishness to discretion, and then perhaps to wisdom, from weakness to strength, or strength to weakness, and often back again, from health to sickness, and back we prayed to health again, from offense to forgiveness, from loneliness to love, from joy to gratitude, from pain to compassion, and grief to understanding, from fear to faith, from defeat to defeat to defeat, until looking backward or ahead, we see that victory lies not at some high place along the way, but in having made the journey, stage by stage, a sacred pilgrimage. Birth is a beginning and death a destination. But life is a journey, a sacred pilgrimage made stage by stage, from birth to death to life everlasting. And so at this time, I invite members of Donna's family to share their words with us. Her son Stephen will be sharing with us, daughter-in-law Lisa, followed by grandchildren Leah and Zach. And if any of that order is added to or changed, please let me know.
Thank you, Rabbi.
The world is changing before our very eyes, and yet we rarely take notice. Every second of every minute, of every hour, of every day, people are born and people die. The world changes. There are different people on the planet. But only when someone we know, only when someone we love is born or dies, do we take notice that the world is no longer what it was. Rabbi Soloveitchik once suggested, there seems to be a tragic flaw inherent in the nature of man from which no one can escape. The people and things that we love and cherish most are not fully appreciated as long as they are alive and present with us. We realize what they meant to us only after they are gone and their image has become faded and unreal. They seem to twinkle from afar as the stars in the night. We admire them, but cannot touch them. How many near and dear ones did we have whom we did not succeed in appreciating fully as long as they were with us? Mother, father, teacher, wife, or husband. In Judaism, we have a mitzvah, a responsibility, and an opportunity to eulogize the deceased. This mitzvah is one aspect of the laws of Avilut, of mourning. However, it differs from the laws of Avilut, namely Shiv'a and Shloshim, the 7 and 30-day periods of mourning, which generally apply only to first-degree relatives, parent, child, Rahman al-Islam, spouse, and siblings. Eulogizing the deceased is a mitzvah that applies to everyone. Anyone can eulogize another Jew, even if they are not a first-degree relative. But the task of the eulogizer is no easy one. For the eulogy must be a calm, accurate description of the life of the departed, and at the same time, elicit an outpouring of sorrow and mourning. Who was our mother? And how can we possibly express the depth of emotion we feel from her loss? The hole she has left in our hearts, and the void she has created in our worlds. I think few people appreciate the challenges Mom had to and did overcome. She was a remarkably resilient person throughout her life. I think that resilience was probably one of her outstanding character traits. Mom was born on July 3rd, 1930, which happened to be her father's birthday. My impression is that Mom's relationship with her parents was not an ideal one. She was the younger of 2 children, her older sister, Marilyn of blessed memory, being 8 years older. When Mom was only 10 days old, Emma Guth, a nurse from Germany who had come with her sister to live in the United States, came to live with the family. Emmy, or as we called her, Nana, the appellation which Mom herself adopted when she became a grandmother, was the family's housekeeper and cook, Mom's baby nurse, and, as Mom herself described the relationship, her everything. Emmy became my mother, confidant, and best friend. She was with me through thick and thin, and I think of her every day with love and gratitude. So many of my memories revolve around my Emmy. When Mom was around 4 years old, she developed asthma, and for the following 9 years, for 2 months during the summer, Mom and Emmy, together with Mom's mother and sister, traveled to Los Angeles in order to avoid the ragweed season in Chicago. Mom had some fond memories of those summers. Both of Mom's maternal grandparents lived with them for a short time. Grandma Grossman came first, apparently having been ill. She died in their apartment. Grandpa Grossman then moved in with them, But after Mom's mother died, he went to live with his son, Uncle Alan, in New York. Mom was in the 8th grade when her mother passed away. I think the experience of her mother's death and funeral, and of course her life afterwards with her father as the sole source of parental authority, left a deep mark on her. Mom attended Francis Parker High School and met Dad for the first time over the summer between high school and college, or maybe the following summer, I'm not quite sure. In any case, it was not exactly love at first sight, at least not for Mom. Mom attended college at Lake Forest for 2 years and then transferred to the University of Illinois at Champaign-Urbana, where she graduated with a bachelor's degree in speech pathology. But Dad's persistence eventually paid off. They courted during Mom's senior year at U of I, became engaged after Mom's graduation in June of 1952, and were married in October of that year. A year or so later, they bought 2 adjoining lots at 9114 Keeler in Skokie and built the first house on the block. They moved into the house in April 1955. My brother David was born in March of the next year. I followed in November of 1959. And Michael, who's joining us in the live stream from Australia, was born in April 1962. Raising the 3 of us was, in Mom's words, a challenge, but a wonderful and gratifying experience. Emmy was always there when I needed her help, and even when I didn't. She and my dad came over very frequently, and Emmy was a central figure in my children's lives. If I were to stop here with this brief description of some of the mileposts of Mom's life, I would be leaving out important aspects of who Mom was. Her work with private patients as a speech therapist, her work as an interior decorator, the many self-improvement and language courses she participated in, her volunteer work at the Council for the Jewish Elderly in the Lieberman Home, and of course her Torah study classes at Temple Judea, to name just a few. For Mom, there were no strangers, only friends she hadn't spoken to yet. She was legendary for inviting new acquaintances to dinner at the house. Whenever she had to deal with some professional or business person, she always endeavored to establish a personal rapport, and people reciprocated. That was perhaps one of her most enduring lessons, and something we read in the Torah portion 2 weeks ago and again last week. Human beings are created in the divine image. 2 weeks ago, we read that we are a reflection of the divine image. In last week's portion, we are taught that the other person is too. Mom always strove to treat the other person with dignity and respect, truthfully and with integrity, with compassion and empathy. If Mom's acts of kindness towards others was another of the enduring lessons she taught us, yet another came later in life, after Dad passed away. Mom was suddenly responsible for numerous areas of daily life that Dad had always taken care of. Finances, home and car maintenance, computers and technology. He prepared her as best he could, but inevitably, the unforeseen arose. Never the one to be fussed over, never wanting to be a burden to others, she nevertheless found herself having to turn to others for assistance. Having been a giver all of her adult life, she now had to become a receiver as well. And in so doing, Mom taught us that allowing others to express their love through performing acts of kindness is also a form of giving. And the gratitude and appreciation she felt and expressed toward those who helped her was its own reward. Many have the custom of reciting Eshet Chayil at the funeral of a Jewish woman, as the rabbi started. Eshet Chayil, which is taken from the 31st chapter of the book of Proverbs, is traditionally recited at home every Friday night in honor of the Sabbath and in honor of the woman of the household. According to the Midrash, Eshet Chayil was composed by Avram Avinu as his eulogy for Sarah Imenu. Eshet Chayil consists of 22 verses corresponding to the 22 letters of the Hebrew Aleph Bet and describes the virtues of the Jewish woman. I would like to recite just 3 or 4 verses, which I think describe some of the aspects of Mom's personality and legacy. Eshet Chayil mi yimtza v'rachok mipnimi michra. Batach ba lev ba'ala v'shalal lo yechesar. Gamalatu tov v'lo ra kol yemei chayeha. What a rare find is a capable wife. Her worth is far beyond that of rubies. Her husband puts his confidence in her and lacks no good thing. She is good to him, never bad, all the days of her life. Mom and Dad sustained a loving, nurturing, mutually supportive relationship for over 50 years before Dad passed away, much too young. Stable families, it seems to me, are the bedrock of a free society. In a world filled with chaos, violence, disregard for truth and the value of human life and dignity, what greater accomplishment can a person possibly aspire to than that? Oz v'hada levusha v'tizchak liyom acharon. Piha patcha b'chachma v'torat chesed al lishona. She is clothed with strength and splendor. She looks to the future cheerfully. Her mouth is full of wisdom, her tongue with kindly teaching. Mom cultivated an optimistic outlook, and she projected this to others. I remember from a young age that friends and neighbors would turn to Mom for advice. More than a few people have told us how much they appreciated Mom's willingness to listen and respected her perspective. Some of the accumulated wisdom she gained through her experience in life is contained in the following thoughts she passed on to her grandchildren. The glass is always half full instead of half empty. This too will pass, and tomorrow will be a better day. Count your blessings, not your troubles. Sheker achen vehevel hayofi, isha yirat Adonai hi tithalal. Grace is deceptive, beauty is illusory. It is for her fear of the Lord that a woman is to be praised. Mom was, in her own way, a person of deep religious faith. Her relationship to the Holy One, blessed be He, was personal, constant, and continuous. Not just in times of great need, but an ongoing expression of gratitude for the blessings in her life. She often told us that she was counting her blessings every day when she would wake up, every night when she would go to sleep, and constantly throughout the day. Rabot banot asuchayu, vi'at alit akulana, tinula mipri yadeha, vi'alaluha, v'sha'arim ma'aseh. Many women have done well, but you surpassed them all. Extol her for the fruit of her hand, and let her works praise her in the gates. There are many people who were helpful to Mom over the course of her final illness. Mentioning some of them is always a risky endeavor. And I hope for those of you whom I'm not aware of and who I'm not able to mention personally, not only will you not take offense, but perhaps consider as a sign of your modesty, and accept our thanks and gratitude. But I do feel compelled to mention the following, again, without in any way meaning to diminish the importance of everyone who helped our mother. First of all, our brother David, who, as the only one of us who lives in the Chicago area, carried the full weight of the mitzvah of kibud av ve'em, honoring one's parents. He helped Mom over these years in countless ways. And his geographical proximity provided Michael and me with tremendous reassurance. David was always ready to help in any way he could, and he did help in so many ways. Lisa, who even after she and Joe moved to Arizona, maintained contact with Mom and would visit every time she came to Chicago, sometimes coming to Chicago just to see Mom. Lisa was, in many ways, Mom's right-hand man, helping in so many ways, not least of which was helping Mom navigate her new medical reality and connecting her with her truly outstanding caregivers. Lisa promised Mom she would be at her side when she reached the end. And she kept her promise. My nephew Zach, who, like his dad, is the only one of his generation living in the Chicago area. Mom had a special relationship with Zach. One of her favorite activities was, believe it or not, grocery shopping. She loved going to the different supermarkets for the latest deals, comparing quality, hunting for bargains. Among other things, when Mom could no longer do her own grocery shopping, Zach would go to the stores and purchase the items on her list. But for anyone who goes shopping with a list, you know that invariably the store does not have everything on the list. Zach would call up Mom from the supermarket for consultation and essentially live stream the shopping experience. I think Mom got a lot of pleasure from this. Our dad's brother, Uncle Chuck, and his wife, Marilyn, whose relationship with Mom predates our birth, were always available, always willing, always ready, and couldn't do enough. And our Moss cousins, Richard, Robert, and Randy, who were always checking in with Mom, dropping by or taking her out for lunch. Cousin Tom Morton, whose devotion and self-sacrifice for Mom were more like those of a son than a nephew. His presence here today is just another example of his love for Mom. Marilyn Harris has been a part of our family's life for well over 50 years. And her relationship with Mom goes back even further. She has always been there for Mom and for us. Mrs. Harris and Mom were like sisters. That's how they both described their relationship. Beata Soltis, my Beata, who's been helping Mom in the house for almost 25 years. Mom's house was not just where she lived, it was her life. And in no small measure, Beata enabled Mom to continue living at home when she was no longer able to do everything for herself. Jill Hirsch, my Jill, who started out as Mom's hospice nurse 2 years ago and became much, much more over the course of Mom's final illness. This point was brought home to us the last few days of Mom's life when Jill went on a long-scheduled, overdue, and well-needed and deserved vacation with her family. And her teammates filled in for her, coming to the house to check on Mom every day. Without meaning to detract from the dedication and professionalism of the other nurses, Jill and Mom developed a personal, genuine, and loving relationship which transcended the professional relationship of a hospice nurse and her patient, as close as that might be. I witnessed how difficult it was for Jill to take leave of Mom. Irv Farber of blessed memory, Mom's special friend, and Irv's daughter Jan Goldman, her son Stan, and their family, Mom's neighbors on Keeler Avenue, whose kindness toward Mom has continued now with Naomi and me, friends in need, indeed. And finally, Mom's caregivers, Van, his wife Mercy, and their niece CJ. Trustworthy, caring, experienced, and sensitive individuals whose care for Mom during her illness was a lesson in devotion. Thank you all for coming today to honor Mom's life, either in person or via the live stream. Teh nishmata tzura b'tzura chaim.
For those of you that don't know me, I'm Lisa Moss, Donna's daughter-in-law, daughter in love. She called me her daughter. I called her Mom. I was married to David for 15 wonderful years. Adam and Zach are our sons. Mom and I had an amazing relationship, both while married to David and forever afterwards. Many years ago, when our divorce was announced to Mom and Dad, I'd made a promise to them that they would always be in their grandchildren's lives. And from that day, our relationship grew exponentially and turned into something wonderful and special for both of us. We often would tell each other how blessed we were to have each other in our lives. She officially became my only mom on February 16th of 1998, when my mother suddenly passed away. We shared so much together. I learned so much from her. We would talk for hours about absolutely everything. We shared things with each other that we told no one else. We always knew that whatever we talked about was only between us. A confidence that we cherished and I will miss dearly. Her advice and opinions were always spot on and never forced, even though she would make a certain face if I didn't take the advice. I learned much later in life that she always wanted the best for me, and I realized her advice was always for my benefit and was solid as a rock. The word ex was never in our relationship. She was not my ex-mother-in-law. She always introduced me as her daughter whenever we would go out, and she was always my mom. She taught me some important lessons along the way that I will never forget. 1, always stop and think before you respond. Think about things from both sides before you react. 2, really listen when someone is talking and let them talk without interrupting. 3, family relationships are everything. Learn to swallow a lot before you speak. Better yet, don't say it. That way you keep your loved ones close. This last lesson was probably the most important one to her. She loved her family like no other and only wanted peace so that she always had her family in her life. She also loved her home. She loved being in it and always said she felt so comfortable in her own home. It was her wish to die at home and not in a hospital, so she did. We had such a special relationship. We talked about all kinds of things, and it was always just between us, as I previously mentioned. Family was always a topic we shared and enjoyed. She would always fill me in on the comings and goings from Israel and Australia, several times forgetting to tell me another great-grandchild was coming soon. We talked every day, whether in good times or bad, and we were always there for each other, whether I lived here or was in Arizona. Mom was practical and frugal. She was never one to follow fads. She was so frugal, the word waste was not in her vocabulary. Any sort of waste would be either given away, repurposed, or returned to the store. This included food. She loved to collect boxes because she would say, I just might need them someday. Once when I was over, I mentioned after going down to the ice box for her to retrieve something, that all the empty boxes she had stacked up in the corner of the basement was a hazard. She thought about it when I told her during our lunch, and then she said, maybe we should go take a look and maybe I can get rid of some. So we looked at all the boxes, and each one she so gingerly touched and decided to get rid of or keep. I could tell it was a hard task for her to get rid of a box that somehow could be used in the future. After we were done, and the boxes she wanted to keep were neatly stacked, there was a small pile of boxes to discard. She told me that she would bring them up later, little by little, and dispose of them. She did not want me to move them upstairs yet. Several years later, she told me that she never got rid of them and put them all back. I just smiled and said, I had a feeling you were going to put them back. My Saturday lunches with her started about 18 years ago, when Dad first got sick, as a way for her to get out for a bit, or even if we were at her house, it would be a little break from her being his personal, wonderful caregiver. Those Saturdays continued after Dad passed away. Every Saturday I would come over for lunch. She always made me a salad with just the ingredients I liked. She would buy them special for me, even if she didn't like them. We would go out to eat sometimes for a treat, as she would say, and that would be her favorite outing. We would go to Walker Brothers when her oil needed changing, as it was right across the street, and we'd take each other's hand as we crossed busy Waukegan Road together after dropping off her car. And speaking of driving, every time we would be out, and if I was driving, whether it was her car or my car, at each intersection where there wasn't a light, she would say, you look good on this side, as if I was a new driver. This happened every time I drove her somewhere. She would often want to accompany me also to go get my blood drawn, as I have a tendency to faint. I would pick her up when we would go to the doctor's office, and of course she came right in with me to hold my hand and talk to me, so I would be distracted. I always knew I would count on her to help me through this, and she was always there. We loved going to Sweet Tomatoes for a lunch out. Early on, I would meet her there, and later I would go and pick her up and bring her there. She always took some of her meal home wherever she went. When we would go to Walker Brothers, she would ask for a box and take what she didn't eat home. At Sweet Tomatoes, they did not give out boxes. It was a buffet. So she always went through the buffet and took 2 muffins, one for her to eat there and one to secretly bring home. She would come back to the table with her tray of food, quietly open her purse, wrap the muffin quickly in a napkin, look left, then look right, and stick it in her purse inside a Ziploc bag that she brought specifically for that purpose. We always celebrated our birthdays on the closest Saturday, getting to choose the restaurant. Sometimes it was still our usual Walker Brothers or Sweet Tomatoes, and other times it was Elwood's or Jameson's, and later on, it was just her kitchen. We talked every day. I would always call her after work as soon as I got in my car. Sometimes the conversation would last 2 minutes, and sometimes my whole drive home. Her kitchen was her favorite room in the house. The way the natural light came in, rarely having to turn on a light sometimes. In that kitchen hung some of her favorite things, like her calendar plates that she loved to collect. But most important were the hundreds of pictures of family and special people in her life that hung in that kitchen. These photos were on 3 sides of the fridge, and on each cabinet, neatly arranged and placed with small round magnets holding them up. She also had special notes and letters from her children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren under those magnets. Many times she would finish preparing lunch, or when she would go to the bathroom, I would stand in the kitchen and I would look at all the pictures myself. When there was a new one added, I would ask about it, and sometimes she would point it out to me and tell me about it, even before I had asked. She was so proud of her family and all the wonderful pictures she could look at each and every day. In late September of 2019, when I was in town to visit with Mom, she told me about her last doctor's appointment that she had recently had, and that her doctor wanted her to see an oncologist as she felt there were changes that needed to be looked at. I think she knew in the back of her head that it was cancer because she seemed to feel it. And she was one of those that felt things in her heart very strongly. She didn't want anyone to know, especially her children, until she had a confirmation from the oncologist. She asked and wanted me to come with her to the doctor. She said, "You are the only one who can come with me." And I told her, of course I would be there with her. After all, we always said no matter what, we would be there for each other, and that was without fail. So a few weeks later, I came back in town for the appointment. And we went together and even indulged in Walker Brothers for our lunch afterwards. She had to have a couple more tests and return to the doctor in a couple weeks. When the return appointment was made, it happened to be a day I was scheduled for jury duty back in Arizona. I called right from there in the doctor's office and was able to postpone my jury duty. Of course, she was relieved that I could be at the next appointment with her. When we were at lunch, after that appointment, we talked in length on how she wanted to handle things if it was the worst case scenario. She was already making her plans in her head. When I returned a few weeks later for the appointment to discuss the results, she knew what her plan was going in and stuck to it when the doctor confirmed her diagnosis. She would not have any treatments. She was blessed to be at that time 89 and had many blessings in her life, she told the doctor. Naturally, I supported her decisions, and it wound up to be the best decision for her. We went back to her house after another Walker Brothers lunch and got working right away on her plan, which included looking at nursing homes and starting hospice. Mom gave me the job of researching the nursing homes and hospice services, so we started touring the facilities and interviewing hospices. When she chose the hospice service she wanted, Suncrest, we interviewed the nurse, Jill, who would be taking care of her. And I could see in Mom's eyes she was the one. Her nurse Jill has been an angel when Mom needed it most. And Mom was also there for Jill when Jill needed her support the most. They became more than just patient and nurse. They formed a loving relationship. With a diagnosis of 3 to 6 months with no intervention, she took it all the way to almost exactly 2 years. October 17th would be 2 years. I also believe she was one of those that was blessed when COVID hit. She stayed indoors, only missing her grocery shopping more than anything else. However, as Stephen said, she had a personal grocery shopper every Saturday. That was Zach. She wanted him to call her from the stores so she could tell him what aisle and exactly where on the shelf to find her items, and it was almost like being there herself. They checked pricing and expiration dates along the way. But her staying at home and away from people kept her healthy and able to be on her own for the next 11 months, once that COVID hit. It was only 7 months ago that she needed caretakers. I continued coming in town once a month to see her and visit. On one of our daily calls in February, I heard the words, "Lisa, I really need you." I told her I would come. Her health took a turn in which she needed a caretaker. Again, we were sent angels from heaven. I found Vans and CJ, her loving caretakers, Mercy on Sundays, through my dear, dear best friend. And Van's wife was the wonderful caretaker of my friend's husband several years ago. Mom fell in love with both Vans and CJ during our interview. They were hired that day and started the following day. Over those 2 days, I worked with them on what Mom liked and where everything was. I labeled each cabinet with what it contained in the kitchen, her favorite room. Mom wanted them to do things in her way, so that was what I showed them. I knew I could go back to Arizona till the next month and be comforted knowing she was in good hands. They are true angels. She even told me once, about 2 or 3 months after they started, when I told her when I was coming the next month, "I don't need you. I have Vans and CJ, and you got them for me." They are so wonderful. When I hung up, the words, "I don't need you anymore, you don't have to come," stung. However, as I thought about it, I realized the definition of need for her. It wasn't that she didn't want me to come. It was that she didn't like to need anyone. But when she did need somebody, she knew others would be there for her. I still came and visited every month, and it would of course be by her schedule. She didn't want me hanging around all day because she had Vans and CJ, and she still was very busy. So I was invited to come for lunch and a chat, which was always wonderful and very much appreciated. While we were with her these last couple of weeks, Zach brought up a box from the basement that had David and Lisa and family written on it. David was there at the time, and I said, "Let's open this together." Inside were many cards that were sent to her and Dad throughout the years. One was a thank you card I sent her and Dad for a gift they got me for my 24th birthday, a long time ago. In that card, I wrote to them, "You are the best in-laws a girl could ever have." The love and respect for each other that we had was very rare. I will be forever blessed with having her in my life for the last 42 years. She will now forever be in my heart, guiding me with the wisdom that she so often shared with me. David, Stephen, Michael, I want to thank you for sharing Mom with me. I hope you know that she was one of the greatest gifts a girl could ever have. I will miss her terribly, as well as my daily calls with her. Mom, you will always be in my heart forever.
Hi, Nan. Whew, it's hot. Hot mic. Okay, bring it back. That was the first thing that I would say to her every time I called. Well, I didn't say it exactly to her. It was to her answering machine, because she had to make it past her screening service in order to actually talk to her. She didn't have caller ID. That wasn't worth the extra $2.99 to her. As we've shared before, my Nana was given 3 months to live just about 2 years ago this month. She beat those expectations and made it through a global pandemic, only to pass the way she wanted. In her sleep, on her time, in her beloved home she's lived in for 50 plus years. Before she was diagnosed, I would try to call her at least weekly to check in. Since the day she was diagnosed, I would call her every single day just for a quick hello and to catch up on the latest plans that she had for the day. As many of you know, she was quite the planner and always busy with appointments to make, house maintenance to concern herself with, or simply making time to meditate daily. Creating lists of things to do and writing little note cards to herself was her signature moves. Many of those lists and cards are, I'm sure, still scattered around the house today. Several months before her diagnosis, she took a spill at home and broke her wrist. This injury started a routine for my Nana and I. Every Saturday I would drive her to her favorite thing to do, which was of course grocery shopping. I always turned on Sirius XM 50s on 5 and turn it up just loud enough so she can hear it, nod, and smile. I'm not quite sure if she knew I crafted the special playlist for her, but I'm confident she enjoyed it. A little taste of yesteryear to set the mood for our trips. I always knew Nana was a penny pincher, but seeing her in action in the grocery store was firsthand was quite the sight. I remember one time we were at Valley, one of the grocery stores we attended, looking for her Stouffer's frozen dinner. She noticed the price of $3.25 and immediately commented, "Forget about it. I can get it for $2.75 at Jewel." I laughed and we continued shopping, tasting tomatoes, grapes, and whatever else she could sample before deciding which was the best choice to purchase. I even saw her peel a whole clementine once to make sure it was sweet enough. This also involved a lot of planning, bringing her own mini scissors to cut through the blue netted bag that the clementines came in, just so she can sneak one out later. Later, while checking out, I asked her if she needed to go anywhere else, and she replied as quickly as I asked, "Of course, I need to go to Jewel for the Stouffer's." I don't think she ever factored in the time and effort involved in going to multiple places into the price savings, but you don't argue with Nana. We went to Jewel and picked up 4 frozen Stouffer's dinners. Apparently they rarely go on sale, so she stocked up. We had several months of weekly shopping trips together, with usually stops at least 2, sometimes 3 grocery stores. Then COVID hit in March of 2020, and my number one priority became protecting my Nana as much as possible, making sure she did not catch it, and in this uncertain world we were just beginning to understand. Even though she tried insisting on joining me to the grocery store, I convinced her, using my many months of shadowing her as experience, to let me go by myself. While most people's shopping trips during the early parts of the pandemic were totally redesigned to be as efficient as possible, Nana still insisted on sending me to multiple stores for the best deals. I couldn't argue with that. I did, however, have to put my foot down when she asked me to taste a bunch of different produce before purchasing it to ensure it was the best one. Being completely masked, gloved up, does not do well for sampling those items. Luckily, she never complained about the quality of produce I picked for her. These weekly shopping trips would start several days ahead of time, with her emailing me a list of items that she needed with specific instructions for each one. No bruises, nice and heavy, check for cracks, no more than $2.29, make sure you call me with the price of this item. Every week there were similar items, and she made sure to include the same instructions for every item. Just in case I didn't remember, she only wants Dean's whole milk in a quart size, costing no more than $2.99. I tried to explain to her that she doesn't have to type the specifics out every time, as I remember from last week, but alas, she did it every single time. There was one attempt where I tried to teach her how to copy and paste from one email to another, but that again ended in a major fail. Along with her instructions, however, she included exactly what aisle each item was in. It really made shopping for all of her items a breeze. Eventually, she requested so many prices because she didn't understand and see that those prices were in the paper anymore. They stopped printing them. I would just call her as soon as I walked into the store, and we would, quote, shop together, with her listening safely at home, her in my ears. It was the closest she would ever get again to shopping. It still brought her so much joy. For the first few months of the pandemic, I would drop the groceries at her door. Eventually, I would let her hold my hand for just a moment, still frightened that I would get her sick and she would pass during a time when even this simple funeral wasn't allowed. After all, this day was planned many moons ago, and while not everyone was able to make it today, we are in a much better position than we were at the height of the pandemic. She did specifically request yellow flowers on her casket, but we'll just say that they got there. Hopefully she won't notice. Nana was always a planner. Her biggest concern prior to her diagnosis was her 90th birthday celebration in 2020. Her boys were planning a big trip with all the family to come together from Israel and Australia and all over to celebrate this momentous occasion. Her biggest concern, honestly, was to figure out the best way to tell them that she would honestly prefer one-to-one trips instead of everyone at once. She almost seemed relieved that no one could travel in for her 90th birthday on July 3rd of 2020. In lieu of a celebration in person, I was able to get several close family and friends to record a special message to her, which many of you participated in. I compiled it all together and had the great joy of sharing it with her in person on her birthday. I made sure to put a GoPro and record her reaction that she didn't even notice while watching it, and reshare it around so everyone could feel as if they were there with her. Over the years, I would talk to her about the time when she would need help around the house, and she would immediately push back. When she found out she had cancer, she was ready. She went from never wanting to leave her home to looking at nursing homes and hospice care within a week. I almost got this odd feeling that she was relieved that her time had come. After all, Papa was patiently waiting for her arrival. When she was diagnosed, I started writing down little thoughts and quotes and memories that she was sharing over the time, and I made sure to want to share them today, so here they are in no particular order, and ironically, some have already been shared, which is even amazing. The first thing that she would say to me when I walked into the door and came over to bring her lunch wasn't, "Hello, nice to see you." It was, "Where's the bill? I need to pay you back." And she would pay me an exact change. $10.23. I never knew what to do with all the change, but it's okay. She would always remind me I never played the lottery because I never wanted to win. Sitting in a quiet room one day, we were waiting for her CAT scan. Took her that time, and she looked around this quiet room and exclaimed, "I hope you are all so lucky to have as great of a grandson as me." I remember being quite embarrassed since we were in an oncology and she was the only one there that had somebody with her. Everybody else was sitting there alone. She claimed to me on several occasions, this is where you close your ears. She claimed on several occasions that I don't eat pork, just bacon on occasion, only when really, really crisp. Count your blessings, not your troubles. Nana, as we've mentioned, was a stickler for time. I remember going over for many bagel brunches over the years. On Sunday, the directions were very specific. Arrive at 10:30 a.m. sharp. Bagels go into the oven at 10:43. Everyone sits at the table at 10:45. Brunch begins swiftly at 10:50. On her 91st birthday this July, when I spoke with her and asked how she felt, she simply smiled and responded, "I'm 29 for the last time," as if she knew. She didn't want to be 29 again. She had enough. She's lived her life, and the blessings have been counted and counted and counted. She always likes to remind me, crying is a human emotion. It needs to be expressed. And a final note, and maybe not many people know, her name, her real name, her legal name, was not Donna. It was Harriet. And she only had to tell me that when I had to take her to get her real ID, because they had to put her real legal name on there for all of the international traveling she was planning to do over these last few years. But when a deadline was in front of her, she wanted to make sure it was taken advantage of. I am truly forever indebted to my Nana. She has taught me so much, and I am so lucky to have been able to spend so much one-on-one time with her for many visits over the years, especially the last few. I know she is smiling down on me, along with her beloved Mort, my papa, finally at peace, a life well lived. I love you, Nana, forever and ever.
My apologies. apologies to Leah, who was supposed to go before Zach, but we have her queued up to share her words at this time. So go ahead, Leah.
Dear family and friends, I want to share with you a little bit of what a special person my Nana was. Living in different countries, we didn't see each other often, but this did nothing to mar the close relationship that Nana and Papa had with us. Nana always insisted on a weekly phone conversation, which later evolved into Skype. The conversation always ended with our ritual fluffy hug and juicy kiss over the phone. Nana would marvel over the softness of the hug and exclaim, "I'm all wet," after the kiss. Of course, always adding her signature bottle popping sound with her finger in her cheek, which all of her grandchildren love. I learned from my Nana to count my blessings. She appreciated everything from people in her life to a good nap. Bad weather or inconvenient road work were to her an opportunity to finish a book and enjoy quality time at home. She always kept busy and active. She was ever sensitive and considerate of those around her, putting their needs before her own, planning and stocking up on our favorite foods weeks before each visit, arranging visits for us with other local family members, including my great Aunt Jana and Uncle Barry from my mother's side, who she became close with. I cherish the many years and good times that we had together. I hope I will be able to emulate the wonderful traits that made my Nana the special person that she was, and that they will pass on to my own children. In this way, and in so many more, Nana will always be with us.
I want to thank Stephen and Lisa and Leah and Zach for sharing those words that come from the heart, from people who really knew Donna, though I had the blessing of getting to know her as well. And at the risk of repeating some of what has already been said, though we mentioned yesterday, the stories about Donna are totally worth retelling and saying again. I want to share these words with you about Donna in the hope that they will offer you some comfort as you have shared your words and offered comfort to all of us. Donna Miller Moss was a loyal participant in the weekly Shabbat morning Torah study at Temple Judea Mitzvah. She lived by the words of Rabbi Ben Bagbag, who said in Pirkei Avot, "Hafoch ba v'hafoch ba, dechola va." Turn it and turn it over again, for everything is in it. These words teach us to read the Torah over and over again because we can always find something new. We can always learn something in the Torah that will guide us as to how we live our lives. And that is what Donna did. When Donna Moss passed away, we were reading in our Torah Parashat Noach. This Torah portion includes extensive genealogies. From one generation to the next, we are given the names. What might be the significance of including such text in our Torah? These lineages give us our identity. Those who come before us help shape who we are and how we will teach the next generation. The same is true for Donna. Ledor vador, from generation to generation, she learned from those before her and they helped shape who she was. And she has now passed down these values and traditions of her family to the next 3 generations. For the generations of Donna's family were central to her life. She took great pride in her family and felt them to be her biggest blessings, as one could readily see in her home. As we've already heard, when you walk into Donna Moss's kitchen, you could see on her refrigerator how much she loved her family, as it was covered with photos of her children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, other family members, friends, people who were important to her in her life. But that was only the half of it. or maybe only the quarter of it. Because if you took a few more steps into the room, you would see that the outside of the cupboards were also completely overlaid with family photos. It didn't matter where you lived geographically, in Chicago or Israel or Australia or somewhere else in the country or the world. She wanted a photo of you nearby her where she could see it. If not in the kitchen, then another part of the house. She also made an album for each of her children and grandchildren, and maybe even the great-grandchildren. In October of 2019, Donna created her autobiography. In it, she shared highlights of her life, which at that time was only the 60th anniversary of her 29th birthday. As Zach mentioned, she was never older than 29. She simply had anniversaries of that year. Donna was a beloved daughter to her parents, Irving and Blanche Miller, Zichronam Livracha. And while sadly Donna's mother died when she was in the 8th grade, as we heard, Donna was blessed already to have her in her life, her beloved Emmy, who raised her. Emma Guth, who had come into Donna's life when she was just 10 days old, was her baby nurse, confidant, and best friend. After Blanche died, Emmy was like Donna's mother, raising her and also helping Donna raise her own children. Donna was also a beloved little sister to the late Marilyn, who was 8 years older. It was more so as adults that the sisters grew very close. And she was a beloved sister-in-law to Marilyn's husband, the late Herbert Newton. Marilyn was young when she was diagnosed with breast cancer, and Donna closely cared for her sister until she sadly died from the disease. In the end, they were more than sisters. They were also dear, close friends. When Morton Moss first met Donna, he had an interest in her. However, she was either not available or not sure. He asked her on dates, and multiple times she gave a tentative okay as her answer. Donna was at the University of Illinois in Champaign as a junior, as we heard, and Mort was sending her letters, postcards, saltwater taffy. In her senior year, she came around and she fell in love with him. He came to visit on the weekends and took her to dinner at the Lincoln Urbana Hotel, where the same server by the name of Marvin took care of them. Now we heard how Donna could be frugal. She had already eaten at the sorority house when it was time for dinner so that she could save Mort a few dollars when they went out to eat. They were married in 1952. And at that reception, it was Marvin who had served them for so many years for dinner. He served them at the reception. Mort and Donna bought and built their own home in Skokie. They raised 3 boys, traveled around the world, and volunteered for the Council for Jewish Elderly, among many other things. Donna was a devoted mother to David, Stephen, and Michael. You remember how when you were younger, she took an interest in your activities, and she was involved in your lives. She was an active den mother. You remember how, to get you to dust the house, this is Michael's story, she hid the pennies, and that was a way of getting you to do the chore. You recall memories with her of apple picking and baking apple pie and trout fishing at Fisherman's Dude Ranch on Gulf Road, and her cooking up the trout. Your mother was a great cook. She had a great memory and remembered all your friends' names and would ask about them. And when you were in high school, she enjoyed just sitting around and talking with your friends. Visiting was a favorite pastime of hers. She loved to catch up and talk, especially one-on-one. And most of the talking for Donna was her listening. She was more interested in hearing about you than focusing on herself. The daughters-in-law who came into her life were dear to her, to Naomi, Catherine, and Lisa, who shared some of those memories. Our condolences to you. Naomi, you spoke the other day of 2 words when reflecting on Donna: kindness and gratitude. She was kind to others and had much gratitude for God and to God for all the blessings in her life. We've heard so many times how she counted her blessings and felt that her life was filled to the brim with them. Donna was always thinking of others. She did not like to be the center of attention. When she graduated from the University of Illinois with a degree in speech pathology, For several years, she helped people who had experienced strokes and regained their speech, as we learned before. She didn't like to ask for help for herself unless it was related to the computer, in which case she often reached out to Stephen unless it was too late in Israel, and then she sought out Adam and Zach. She was a good listener and remembered what other people needed, often providing them with that necessity. She set out cookies for the landscapers and Cokes for the people who plowed the snow. Judaism was central to Donna's identity. As an adult, she became one of the Anshe Mitzvah at Temple Judea Mitzvah, and at the reception, she made sure there were kosher cookies for her granddaughter from the jewel. Now, Donna had her own unique way of celebrating Shabbat. She was not so much of an evening person, let alone a night person. So she lit her candles around 2 p.m. on Friday to be sure that they would be completely burned out by the time she was ready to count her blessings before she went to bed. Donna's minhag was to come to Temple Judea Mitzvah on Saturday mornings for the minyan and study. She was usually the first one there. She made sure the sidurim were set on the table for everyone. She greeted others as they came in with a hug. And when it was her turn to lead a prayer, she read the passage with deep spirituality, bringing a certain vibrancy to the prayer. Then when we recited Kiddush, before we segued into the study session, Donna led the Vishamru chorus line of dancers. A love of Judaism and deep inquiry as to how our tradition guides us, study of text, and a passion for Israel are all values which Donna passed down through the generations. She was a cherished grandmother, Nana, of Adam, Zachary, Leah, Naphtali, Yocheved, Hananiah, Joshua, Aaron, Benjamin, and Emily, and then to Corey, Kaylee, Benny, Ma'ayan, Ma'oz, and Shachar, and a proud great-grandmother of Zohar, Eden, Matar, Omer, Yuval, Shaket, Shalev, Ziv, Dan, Carmel, Maor, and Lila. So many grandchildren and great-grandchildren, so many blessings. And she knew all of you and all your birthdays, and she sent cards and gifts and put riddles or jokes or cartoons inside the cards. You have a fondness for the Berenstein Bears books which she sent you and the meaningful lessons they taught. Your Nana was so organized. She had everything written down and kept her schedule. If it was planning a party, each stage of the prep for the meal was written down. In every room, she had her notepads, paper clips, and pencils in case something came to mind that she wanted to write down as she was thinking of it. And those photos we mentioned earlier, each one had the name and the date on it, so there would never be any guesswork at a later date. She was organized in life, and in anticipating that she might be gone before certain great-grandchildren celebrated a birthday, she already sent gifts for her great-grandchildren. When she was able to talk to you or Skype with you, all she wanted to hear was, "I love you, Nana." You did, and she loved you. And Donna was a fond aunt to many more blessings. She was a dear friend for so many years to Marilyn, who was like a dear sister to her, having shared so many memories from the time the children were in the baby buggies and the relationship before and after. And the other things about Donna Moss, how she could make friends with anyone wherever she went. Like the time she was driving the red and white Rambler on the expressway and the hood flew up and a truck driver who saw it came to the side of the road, took some rope, wrapped the hood around, and Donna invited him for dinner. How she cared about her appearance and always looked good. She always had one of her multiple lipsticks nearby after she ate, ready to reapply. She was equally beautiful on the outside as she was on the inside. How she was loving and caring and so personable. And when she hosted a meal, she was always up getting a salt shaker or refilling a dish. And when she was a guest at her children's meal, she was also up and getting and tending to the needs of others around the table. How she never spoke ill of anyone. How she was a woman of grace, dignity, and composure. How she embraced forgiveness and letting go of anger and grudges. How she was a glass, half-full person and always embraced the positive. And all the other things about Donna Miller Moss that would take another 62 anniversaries of her 29th birthday to tell. In her autobiography, Donna spoke briefly with fondness about her grandparents and a few memories with them. She spoke of her mother, her father, and her Emmy and the ways they raised her. And now she is the one who has passed down the values and teachings to the children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, L'dor vador, from generation to generation. We are who we are today because of our genealogy, the identity that has been passed down to us from the generations before, along with the values, tradition, heritage, stories, and more. We are who we are today because of who Donna Moss was and how she was in our lives. Donna Miller Moss is now gone from this world, but something of her can never die. She will live on as a part of your identity and in the memory and hearts of all who loved her. O God of comfort, comfort us now and help us to keep alive the memory so dear to us in Donna Miller Moss. Amen. As we are able, we rise. El male rachamim shochein b'maromim hamitzei menucha nechona tachat kanfei hashchina im kedoshim utehorim kezohar kiyam masirim et nishmat Adonia bat Yitzchak shehalcha leolama barachamim yastireha beseter knafav leolamim vitzror bitzor hachayim et nishmata Adonai hu nachalata v'tanuach b'shalom al mishkava v'nomar Amen. Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to Donna Miller Moss, who has entered eternity. O God of mercy, let her find refuge in the shadow of your wings, and let her soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God, you are her inheritance. May she rest in peace, and let us say, Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, those of you who are here, those of you who are online, memorial contributions to Beth Emet, the Free Synagogue, or Suncrest Hospice, or to your favorite charity. That's where memorials can go. For those who are here, it's all on our service folder. For those of you online, you can find that information on our website. In keeping with the tradition, we're lowering Donna's casket. We're going to try to attempt to do a full coverage, and then we'll have Kaddish. So for anyone who can stay, so we can keep a minyan for the mourner's Kaddish, that would be greatly appreciated. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a little humid out here, so we're going to be passing out water and cold towels. Take advantage of it, okay? Also, please be seated. It'll be a little bit till we do the full coverage, so please take a moment, drink some water, have a towel, have a seat. and gentlemen, we're going to be using the earth here, but you also have small shovels here. So if it's easier for you to take this earth, come forward. For those of you who can help with the larger amounts of earth, come forward just a moment. Folks, please come forward. Folks, if we can have on either side. kindly have people help cover the grave?
They'll give you because you're not like knowing, start at that monument and work your way into it.
I'm just gonna check this here, but I'm not percent
You've
sure.
got a pretty good idea. Yeah.
But it's, I was 8 years old the last time.
The trees might be bigger, you're big.
I just want to see if I know where you live.
Good luck with everything.
Did she really? Rich, we don't know why they doing that. It's our good friends, Rich and Jay. They hear all this private stories and the pictures. Oh, we got donuts. We have one donut. We have one donut. They only had, I actually had one. I picked some up for us. And then I had lunch for third. On Sunday, we went to watch the game. And I talked to his daughter. She's never had one. So I called. There's 4 donuts left. I said, I'll take 2. Karen, I'll give you. You guys take 2. I almost like
Ladies and gentlemen, in just a moment, the rabbi will lead everybody in the special Kaddish. Then we'll have a Shirah. So if everybody can stay here just for a few more moments, and if we could get everyone by the canopy, except those of you who are helping shovel the earth. Folks, please come underneath the canopy. Folks, please come this way as we prepare to say the special mourner's Kaddish. The Kaddish you say at the grave, then we'll have a Shirah. And ladies and gentlemen, if I kindly ask everyone just to stay a few more moments. David? Where's David? David, come this way. David?
In just a moment, we're going to continue with the words of the Kaddish that is said at a graveside. And following that, we ask for those who are here will torn 2 lines from the grave back to the car so that we can offer our condolences and surround the okay.
לחברייך, לחברותייך, לחברת הקדישה, וכל מי שעזר לך ועשה לך, אני מבקש סליחה מחילה. אם פגעו בך, אם חיסר מכל מה שנעשה, לצרכיך, לצרכייך, לצורך הטהרה והקבורה. אנא תסלחי, כי אחד נעשה לכבודך ובירה. הצור תמים פועלו, כי כל דרכיו משפט. אל אמונה ואין עוול, צדיק וישר הוא. The rock, perfect is his work, for all his paths are justice. A God of faith without iniquity, righteous and fair is he. Adonai Natan, v'Adonai Lakach, Yehi Shem Adonai Mevorach. Hashem gave and Hashem took. Blessed be the name of Hashem. V'hu achum yichaper avon v'lo yashchit. ויבא להשיב אפו ולא יאיר חכמתו. קדיש. יקדש שמי רבה. במעדי ובעדית לתחדתה, לחיה מתיה, ולעסק היית ולחיה עלמה. ולמבנה קרתד ירושלים, ושחל על ההיכלה בגאווה. ולמעקה פולחנה נוכרה מנהרה. ולעטב הפולחנה דשמיא לעטרי, ימליך קודש אבריחו במלכותך וקרא, וחייכון ובימיכון וחיידוך בישראל, בעגלה ובזמן קריב אבינו אמן. יהי שמי אבא מברך לעולם עולמי המיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתממה ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ותעלה וישמד קודשה אבריחו. לילה מן כה בחטא ושירתה, תוש בחטא ונחמתה, דמירם בימיו אבינו אמן. יהי שלמה רבה מן שמיים וחיים עלינו, וכל ישראל אבינו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, והוא יעשה שלום עלינו, וכל ישראל אבינו אמן.
Ladies and gentlemen, if I could kindly ask everyone to help form the Shura. Boris will help you over here. And then Steve and David will walk through, and Rabbi Memes Fuller will lead everybody in the traditional words of consolation, which you can find on the back of the service folder.
Please repeat after me. Hamakom Yenachem Etchem Betoch Sha'ar Avelei Zion V'Yerushalayim. May Hashem comfort you among the mourners of Zion and Jerusalem.